Hello, my name's Stephen Boyle. I first got interested in photography when I was doing a degree in fine art. I had access to an old chemical film lab where I could develop my own photographs. Later on I got involved in digital photography, which I loved. Ended up taking wedding photos, events photos, and helped Guildhall Press publish a photo book about 2013 in Derry. And today I'm here really to show you a few tips to help you use your mobile phone camera effectively. So there's a few basic things that I'll run through today, and before we get started, the most important thing first is to look at the outside of your phone. I use an old Samsung Galaxy S7. It takes really good photographs even though it's quite a few years old. But the first thing you have to look at is the lens. Just make sure that's clean. If there's any dust or scratches or dirt on that lens, that'll show up and affect the quality of your photograph. So give that a clean with a soft damp cloth. So even some of the cotton things can be a bit harsh, and over time if you keep wiping it, it'll eventually scratch that surface, and that'll affect the quality of your photographs. So make sure that's clean. Another thing is your camera case. This camera case is pretty good. It's the Samsung, the official one for this, and it's quite thin. But some camera cases have quite thick ridges around here. They don't fit exactly over the camera and the flash properly, and I've seen loads and loads of people taking photographs, especially indoors photographs, where it looks all white and cloudy, and it's the flash usually reflecting off the ridge, or partially covering the lens or something like that, and it can affect it quite badly. So if you're going to be taking photographs, you're probably best to take it out of its case if you can, unless you've got a really good case that's been tried and tested. But that can be a big problem with a lot of people's photographs. Okay, in this first part I just want to talk quickly about using your eye. So that's just getting out there and looking out for a few tips that professional photographers have got well established. A few of these things are things like leading lines. So if you're taking a landscape photograph and there's a fence running up or ploughed fields, look for these lines that will draw you to a focus point. So that might mean moving around. They make the most out of these lines. They try and get a focus point at the end. So you've also got things like your perspective. If you're taking photographs of people, try moving around different perspectives from where you're taking your picture from. A really popular one is just getting down low to the ground. Get down low and photograph up at somebody. You get really nice perspectives on their shape, and it can draw you up. Look for repetitions as well. Sometimes you might see posters lined up, or if it's dinner plates, coffee plates, look for repetitions and try and get that under your frame. There are reflections as well. Sometimes you'll get reflections in water, puddles. Water in general always goes well in the photographs for some reason. So if you get anything with lakes, waterfalls, and look for reflections too if you can. You might get a nice piece of graffiti with a puddle on the ground, or a person in front of the puddle, and try and get the reflection, and that always goes down well. And symmetry as well. You can use really simple abstract photograph techniques using symmetry. So look for a line where something is split. Look for cross sections, and you can place something on it. You can mess around with that. There's lots of different things you can do with symmetry that can make really effective photographs. So yeah, just get out there and look for things with your eye. In time, you'll find yourself that you develop your kind of own style and things that you look for that make effective photography. Grid lines are basically a feature on your phone that you can bring up onto your viewfinder when you're taking photographs. It's a grid that separates your image into thirds, and you can use it to align subject matter when you're taking photographs. The rule of 2/3 is probably something that Da Vinci came up with a long time ago, and it basically is an understanding that for some reason the human mind, the human eye, is drawn off-centre. You're drawn into an image more often whenever it is off-centre, preferably at a third. So that can be used from top to bottom, left to right. For example, in a landscape photograph, if you have your grid lines up, you can have foreground, maybe flowers or hay or something in the foreground. In the bottom third, you have your main image in the middle, the hills and the mountains, and then the sky in the top there. Similarly, portrait photography, if you're taking a photograph of a person, maybe keep them on one of the side third lines, and then you have the other 2/3 will be empty. For some reason, that ratio of having your subject matter taking up a third of your shot, and then what they call negative space taking up the other 2/3, seems to work really effectively as well. So this can be used in lots of different ways. The things that we talked about, using reflections, repetitive patterns that you see, and it's really effective, and it's something. It sounds quite basic to get into, but like all top professionals tend to use it a lot as well. So it'll work all the way through. For an iPhone, I think you would go to settings and choose photos and camera, and then switch the grid on. Mine's an Android phone, Samsung. I go to the settings button here in my camera mode. Got my camera settings, rear camera, front camera. Scroll all the way down to grid lines. You can have it off, the 3x3 or square. 3x3 is the one that we're looking for, and that should bring up lines going down, lines going across. Should be able to see it. And that will help you use the rule of 2/3 when composing your photograph. Okay, when taking photographs, you want to think about your focus. There's a very simple way to bring up focus on your screen. You can just and then you can choose a point of focus to take from. It can be a little bit difficult if you're trying to focus on something moving, but with a bit of practice, you can get that sorted out pretty quickly. For example, if you're taking a photograph of a flower that's moving back and forward, you can tap on the focus and tap on the photograph pretty quickly. You know, just tap, and that's it. That way you're going to get as close as you can to it. But it is important to think about your focus too when you're taking photographs. It can be a really good way of showing off texture and colour. Even if it's a portrait of somebody's face, you can pick an actual point on the face that you really want to focus on, and that'll draw you in. And on top of focusing on something, you want to think about what negative space you're creating as well. So like that, if you have a sharp focus point, you can blur out. You can use apps and everything afterwards if you wanted to blur out things to create this negative space, so as your eyes drawn on to your focus point. I'll show you very quickly how to use the focus on your phone. With my Samsung Android phone, when I want to look at the focus, I just tap the screen. Circle comes up. Sometimes it's a square. On mine it's a circle, and that will focus on wherever I touch it. So if I have a landscape and I want to photograph the foreground, maybe the flowers in front could be down here, or perhaps the mountains in the background could be over here. It will focus on there. It also brings up the exposure. For the exposure settings, just press the screen like you do for focus. And here we have an exposure meter. This will bring it down to be underexposed. This will be overexposed. I'll show you. If I lift it off this, you can see everything is very white. I can bring it down. This will make the whites seem less white, get more colour into the whites. Or if I bring it up, everything will just become super exposed. But that's essentially how to adjust your exposure meter. As I mentioned before, post-production is simply working on your photographs after you've taken them. And there's lots of different means to do that. There are apps that you can use just straight on your phone. You take your image on your phone, take a photograph, and then open it up in one of your apps and work on it there. Even within your camera itself, there's usually some sort of photo editing app that's already built into your phone that you can work on your picture from. But like I say, you can download a multitude of apps. There's one called Snapseed by Google, which is really good. One of the good things about that is you can add blurring effects. In the past with photography, a lot of these blurring effects were kind of difficult to produce. You had tilt shift photography, which had specialized lenses which blurred the top and the bottom of the image. Creates really effective photographs. You can Google tilt shift photography, but you can recreate that effect using blurring lines on top and bottom. And what it does is, especially if you're taking like a city scene, you know, from a high vantage point, looking down on cars or people, it makes them look like toy models. It's a weird effect. But also the other one, using depth of field photography, quite often it's a mixture of using, you know, good quality lenses, shutter speed, to get the person in focus and the background all blurred out. But this can be done now in post-production. And it's really good because you can sometimes get better quality lighting on the subject matter, and then and blur out the background. So that's pretty good. If you are going to be using a lot of post-production stuff, and if you want to like enter competitions and really show off your photographs, it's worth taking your photographs on your phone in RAW mode. Now, when you take JPEGs, which is usually how people take photographs, it takes your image and that's your size. It has your megapixel size and everything in there. But when you take a picture using RAW, it creates lots of digital information about the image you've just taken. It takes a wee bit longer to process each photograph. You can't use it for photo bursts or anything like that. But when you take an image in RAW, there's lots of other information that's stored about the photograph that you've taken. And then if you go to post-production, it gives you a lot more room to maneuver, you know, moving from lights to darks and things. You can get a lot more detail out of your image, and it prevents it from breaking down as well. So those are all good. Probably a lot of the stuff that you'll be doing with your photographs, like on Instagram, is just using filters. And filters are really good for that kind of quick way of working, and it can degenerate the quality of your picture a little bit, but if you're really taking an interest in your own photography and want to develop it, I would recommend using these other apps and post-production techniques rather than just slapping on a filter. And what you can do in other apps such as like Photoshop Lightroom, or there's one for your phone by Photoshop called Photoshop Express, and you can save the changes you make to a photograph. So it's when you get another photograph, maybe it's a summer type of photograph or summer light, you can use all those saved changes and just apply it onto that, and that's basically what a filter is. It's a bunch of changes that have been made. Yeah, I would recommend Photoshop Express and Photoshop Lightroom. They download as apps on your phone as well. You can try them one at a time. They obviously take up a fair bit of room on your phone, but the beauty of Photoshop is it doesn't degenerate your image, and there's loads you can do. It's like an introduction to their paid for software programs that you can get for your laptops or computers. If you want to take photographs in RAW, go into your settings again. Like I said, this is an Android phone. Other phones might be different. And my phone, it is picture size. This will also give you a choice of the megapixels. The largest amount of megapixels, which will be the best quality, which is 12 megapixels, but it's a 4.3 ratio. That's the size of the photograph it takes. Mine's is 9.1 megapixels. Slightly less, but it has a wider screen. If I want to take photographs and save the RAW as well as the JPEG files, just click that on. Bear in mind that it will be a much larger file size that's saved, so it'll quickly use up the memory on your phone when you take lots of photographs using RAW. Okay, finally, I hope you go out there and take lots of photographs. I'm just going to give you a few extra tips when you're taking photographs. I've already mentioned shooting in RAW. If you're definitely going to be doing a lot of post-production work on your photographs and you're learning how to use all those post-production techniques, shoot in RAW. It gives you a lot more room to manoeuvre. Also, another tip would be don't use a flash. Learn how to use your phone without a flash. Flashes are okay if you're using digital photography and you have external flashes, but in most cases the flash on your phone is totally insufficient. It creates a long exposure, which means blurred shots. The light's just not bright enough. It gives horrible washed out colours. Mobile phones are pretty good at compensating in low light conditions and are pretty forgiving. So try not to use the flash on your phone. If you can, maybe find other external light sources. If there's like a neon jukebox, get your subject matter to come up close to the neon light and get that glow. In low light, you might be a slightly longer shutter speed. So I would recommend using a tripod to hold your phone. Tripods, you can get loads of really good ones. Look for something sturdy and strong. You can get ones like the Gorilla Pod, which will wrap around. It has legs that'll wrap around like a tree branch or something like that. But you want it to be pretty sturdy. Holding it by hand in low light conditions, like I say, if you're going to have a long shutter speed, just breathing or your natural movements will create a blur in your final image. Tripod will get rid of that. You can also think about external lenses. You can get clip-on lenses for your phones, so you can try like different styles of photography, like a fisheye lens, that has those big kind of wide lenses. You can get zoom lenses as well to draw in, and so you can experiment with things like that if you have them, the money and the time. And yeah, different angles is always good. The beauty of taking photographs, unless you're taking in RAW, which RAW is large file sizes and you might run out of memory space on your phone. But generally, if you're taking photographs, take lots of different pictures. Different pictures with different exposure, different focus, and then and different angles as well. Like I say, get really down low, get up high, take a bunch of different things, and you can go through them after and just select the ones that have worked, and you can just discard the rest. So yeah, take plenty, practice, try, and that's that's it. You know, professional photographers are all practicing and experimenting and trying new things all the time. So that's what you should do from the start. Good luck.